Okay, Zera Shimshon on Parshas Vayechi. This is the 15th entry in the Sefer. This is the 15th entry. It's the actually second to last on Vayechi. The Gemara in Soita and Daf Yud Gimel B'Av Tana Kulam Muhammad Bo Kedshol Kedshol Tabrano Shel Yaakov another Kulam Kisrayim, and it was 36 son. What the Gemara over there is relating the Gemara is referring to is that on the Levaya that Yosef escorted Yaakov's coffin, and he and the Shvatim were involved in burying him in Maras HaMachpelah. So now Yosef, to honor his father, put his own crown. He was the vice king of Egypt. Put his own crown on Yaakov Avinu's coffin. Okay, so now as they were approaching Maras HaMachpelah, all our dysfunctional extended family, the Bnei Esav, Esav and his kids, and there was the Bnei Yishmael and the Bnei Keturah, and you guessed it, everyone that challenges our rights as being the real chosen people, everyone who challenges our rights to Eretz Yisrael. And sure enough, they were going to challenge those rights, by barring Yaakov Avinu from being buried in Maras HaMachpelah. So that way they're making all the above statements. We're not really the chosen people. There are really Zera Avram. It's not really our land. Hebron is not really ours, etc., etc. Okay, so but once they observed that they saw Yosef's crown on Yaakov's Aron, they got taken aback, and they had a change of heart, and they all put their own crowns, because there are a bunch of kings amongst them. They put their own crowns also on the Aron, on the coffin of Yaakov Avinu, to honor him. And the Gemara ends up says there were 36 crowns in total. All right, so that's the Gemara. Okay, so this is the Gemara he wants to unpack. Kosher imay sakazov Muhammad Yaakov cross Yaakov Bosam Ora Kamosh Kasav Marsha Ech Bishvul Zen Efchadat Mimasha Sabatchil. Now look, if their objective was to bar him from Yaakov from being buried in Maras HaMachpelah, right? That was the objective, right? So it wasn't just stam, who the heck are you? You're invaders. Then they see the crown. Oh, hush for person. No. They knew exactly who Yaakov Avinu was. They knew exactly what the Levi was, and they had a agenda. They don't want to allow the burial of Yaakov Avinu in Maras HaMachpelah. And like I said, if you see who the characters were, these are all the other progeny of Avram Avinu, right? Yishmael, Esav, right? Bnei Keturah, right? Obviously, they want to make a statement. It's the same statement they're making until this day. Don't we have problems in Hebron, amongst other places, right? To make the statement that we're not the real chosen people, we're not the real continuation of Avram Avinu, and hence Eretz Yisrael doesn't belong to us. Right? So they want to make all these statements by barring Yaakov Avinu being buried in Maras HaMachpelah together with Avram Avinu. Okay, and if that's the case, they had a different agenda. So why should they change their mind just because they see Yosef's crown? They had a specific agenda in mind. How does Yosef's crown on the coffin cause them to abandon that agenda? Okay, that is the question. So in order to, unpack this, let's throw out another question. Weird way to honor his father by putting his crown, Yosef putting his crown on Yaakov's coffin. Why is it a weird way to honor him? Because the pasuk says, "First, en shiltam b'yom hamisa," right? Or Yom HaMaves, pasuk in Koheles, there is en shiltam b'yom HaMaves. There is no reign. There's no kingship. A person doesn't have any reign or control on the day he dies. The pasuk says that even regarding Moshe Rabbeinu, that pasuk clause, Chazal say Moshe Rabbeinu on the day that he died, he could not. It's Vayelech Moshe, right? He had to go to people. People didn't come to him. You're not a king on the day you die. So it's very interesting. Yaakov's dead. So you want to honor him by putting a crown on his coffin as if he's a king. That's very ironic. You want to be machabed the person, right? But this is the type of covet that seemingly doesn't apply. Like you're giving him like as a crown, kingship. There is no kingship. There is no reign. There is no rulership. If that's a real word. There is no, shilton, control on the day of death. So Yaakov's dead. You don't put a crown on the coffin of a dead person, because that's what he doesn't have. He doesn't have shilton. He doesn't have control. He doesn't have reign. So why is Yosef honoring him in that peculiar way? It's peculiar when you notice pasuk in Koheles of putting a crown on Yaakov's coffin. V'tzorach lo'imar sherotza niach kisro al arono k'dei lirmos Yaakov inu lo meis. Right? So now we say just the opposite. A dead person doesn't have shilton, doesn't have control, doesn't have reign, right? Right? So putting the crown on Yaakov Avinu's coffin is to show the famous Gemara in Tanis that Rashi invokes in this week's parsha of Yaakov Avinu lo meis. Yaakov is not dead. He's not really dead, and that's the point, because dead people don't have reign. Right, they don't have shilton. So I'm going to put the crown. That's the greatest honor to show he's not really dead. Yaakov Avinu lo meis. The Gemara in Tanis Darshes, Mahu b'chaim, Mazar b'chaim, Afu b'chaim. Just like his children are still alive, so also Yaakov Avinu is still alive. Okay, so so that's the whole point. He had no sense, as we say, just the opposite. All right, put the crown on Yaakov Avinu's coffin to show Yaakov Avinu is not really dead. All right, because dead people have no reign. V'zel simon muvok shedavku roili kav b'mar v'chel v'lo esav ken shosem lachem rose hivinatzam hadavar hazeh shakvinu adayin chai v'nisro mishum hachi nefcha dato imasha b'tchila shusfur m'shemes Yaakov. Right, so he's jumping to the conclusion that he's going to reverse engineer a little bit, but he jumps straight to the conclusion and says, so now you want to know what scared the heck out of them. They understood what Yosef was alluding to. Yaakov is not really dead. He's still alive. Besod, not just tzaddikim b'misasom kruim chayim, which for sure, is the tzaddikim buried in the Maras HaMachpelah, like Adam Marisha and like Avraham Avinu, but Yaakov in particular has the madrega of lo meis, right, has not died. So, Esav, who was there, and these guys who were, they all hate the Jewish people for reasons of their own. The Bnei Yisrael, the Bnei Keturah, right? They're all jealous of Am Yisrael being the real continuation of Avraham Avinu. So it's like today, they'll back up Esav. So even though Esav was the main competitor, he said, I should be the one buried with Yitzchak, our father, and Avraham, our grandfather. It's like today. It's just like amazing how it's like today. The Arabs are in bed with the leftists, which is, the leftists, the west of the Western world. The Western world leftists are Esav, right? And the Arabs are Yishmael, and Bnei Keturah are also, the other children of Avraham Avinu who intermarried with Yishmael. They're all together, the atheistic leftists together with the crazy Muslims, all together. And they just back each other up because of their common enemy, the Jewish people. But now Esav saw, and they understood, Esav was their man that they're propping up. They're propping up Esav right now in their effort to have a proxy war with the Jewish people. It's amazing, Sometimes, they prop up Esav in their proxy. Sometimes Esav props up the leftist Soros. They prop up, the Arabs in their proxy war with us. How it is. Bnei Keturah, Bnei Yishmael, and Bnei Esav, every once in a while, one of them is actively at war, and the other two are just back them up. Okay, so they realized, Esav realized, and they realized, Esav, who they're propping up at this time, can't compete. They can't duplicate, a man, who's not really dead. They can't fight with that. So the competitor, being Esav, in this case, could never compete, and have this madrega of even death doesn't have full control over him. So they're like, whoa, there's no competing with this, and and this guy who's not really dead is Roy to be buried with these tzaddikim, right? And that's why they just saw we can't compete. So we're not going to win this battle today. Okay, but now he's, so they understood the code, the crown of Yosef on the Yaakov is not really dead, because if he were dead, he wouldn't be having a crown. So Esav, who they were propping up, at that time, they were doing a proxy war through Esav. At the time, they're all backing up Esav. Esav can't compete with this. All right, so not going to win this battle. So they surrendered. And okay, so the question is to go a little bit deeper into these concepts that we're saying. But I just want to say that's the Pshat in that Gemara. Seeing the crown, they realize Yaakov is not really dead, and that's not a madrega Esav could compete with and say, I'm the real chosen one. I'm the real Hemshech of Avram through Yitzchak, right? Their guy that they were propping up can't compete. So they folded, and they put their crowns also to honor Yaakov. Okay. So now I just wants to now unpack, go deeper into this. Right? So now the Inyan is, who's buried in Maras HaMachpelah? Adam and Chava, Avram Yitzchak, Avram and Sarah, I meant to say. Avram and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, and Yaakov and Leah, right? Adam Rishon and the three Avos and their wives, I mean Adam and Chava. Adam Rishon and his wife, and the three Avos and their wives, because the three Avos and their wives are all tikkunim for the chet of Adam and Chava. Right, that's beside Atem Kruyim Adam, Vena Akum Kruyim Adam. Right, we're called the real Adam because we are the ones that fix what he did wrong and get back to what Adam was originally and what he was meant to be. Right, that's what we're going to reach at the time of Mashiach. We'll not only fix the sin of Adam, we'll also climb the rungs. Climb in Madrega. Those Madregas that Adam Rishon was meant to climb and he didn't. Okay. So we're the tikkun, and the not just the tikkun of fixing the damage, but we're also the tikkun of fulfilling, the unfulfilled destiny of Adam Rishon, right? And now Adam Rishon's chet was in three ways. Well, first of all, there was avodah zara. He kind of bought into the heresy of the snake, that you could be an alternative to God, or there could be an alternate way to God. An alternative to God, an alternative to the way of life God wants to impose upon you. That's avodah zarah. Then there was shvichas damim, in the sense he brought death to the world. People wouldn't have died if not for Chet Adam Rishon. He brought death to the world, right? And then there's also, it was Gili Arayas, because the sin caused a schism between Adam and Chava. And because of that, they separated for 30 years, and there was during that time, Adam spilled the seed, and and created a bunch of demons, and that was all like Gili Arayas. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's what that's what the Svarim saying. That's what the Ramami Panade is referring to, if I remember correctly. Says it like that. So now the Avos fixed it. The Avos fixed these. It took three Avos to make up for the sin of one of Adam Rishon, but between the three of us, that's why you generally have only one father and mother. We have three. It took three sets of Avos and Mimos to create the Jewish people, right? It took three sets of parents to make up for the original parents of mankind. That's why Shlosha Avos, right? Ain't Kornel Avos Shlosha. After that, it's all Shvatim, but it took us three sets of parents to make up for how the first set of parents of all mankind screwed up and ruined mankind. And Am Yisrael is supposed to be the redemption of man, the aspect of mankind that has tikkun, right? It took three of us to make up for Adam and Chava. Took three, the three of us who most, Racha, of course, is a part of it also. It's Arba Emos, right? Shlosha of us, Arba Emos to make up for Adam and Chava. Okay, so now it's as such, right? That as I recall, I believe he's going to refer to this later, right? But as I recall from the Rav Panu, Avinu, he was metakin for the Avodah Zara of Adam Rishon, because Avram Avinu is one who destroyed all the idols and preached the emunah of Hashem Echad, and that idolatry is stupid. Yitzchak Avinu was metakin for shvichas damim, for the death that came to her by the opposite, being willing to be moser nefesh al kiddush Hashem. I believe is part of how he was metakin for that. Sadly, Esav, who wasn't part of Yitzchak Avinu's tikkun, ki be Yitzchak yikaras Zera v'lo kol Yitzchak. Yitzchak will be your continuation of Ram, but not all Yitzchak. In Yitzchak, but not all Yitzchak. So that's what. So it's no coincidence that Esav, who wasn't part of the tikkun of Yitzchak, Esav was a rotzeach. He was a murderer, because Yitzchak Avinu comes to be metakin the shvichas damim aspect of what Adam Rishon did, by amongst other things, being willing to die al kiddush Hashem. So tikkun for ritzicha, of bringing death upon others. Okay, so and then now Yaakov Avinu, as we're going to learn now, the stress is going to be on him, right? He's the tikkun of Gilui Arayas, right? First of all, Yaakov Avinu never saw spilled seed ever. What he says in this week's parasha, Ruvain b'chorei kochi, my strength and first, effort. Meaning it was the first. Ruvain came from the very first seed that ever came out of Yaakov Avinu. And Yaakov Avinu also he married two sisters, which technically is a type of adultery. It's a forbidden regime, but he did it better, betikun. So that's also another aspect of how he's metakin for Gilui Arayos, right? But he's going to go deeper into this. Let's not spoil the fun. He says, "V'shucha Charles Yaakov Yisrael Bazar Krush become cause Lord Shalom Rishon Levi Ilon the Meisel Alma Yaakov Tos V'Ilon Chayim Chach Yisrael Bazar the man Chaz Yaakov Bechama Chayim Mitzvaysin Lei." So now Yaakov Avinu is called Bechir Sheba. So Yaakov Avinu is not just finalizes, but he's beside Achron Chaviv, like he's like the Spitz of he's Bechir Shebavas, which means he's not just the finale. He didn't just add one more tikkun to complete the whole puzzle that needs to be rebuilt because of Chet Adam Rishon. It's more than that. Yaakov Avinu is the Av that Mamish is closest, to what Adam Rishon was Kodem Achet. He doesn't mention this. I don't believe he doesn't. There's a Gemara in Bamitzvah. Shufred Yaakov made Shufred Adam Rishon. The beauty of Yaakov was almost like the beauty of Adam Rishon before the sin, and that's the secret that Mus Yaakov Chagol covered. Yaakov's face is engraved in the divine throne. Because Yaakov most resembles what Adam was supposed to be. It's like prototype man. So now, generally speaking, Adam Rishon did not cling to the Eitz HaChaim. He clung to the Eitz Hadas Tovara, which gave us death and gave us, the human intelligence that we have that sadly is very susceptible to apikarsis. And so generally speaking, Adam Rishon, generally speaking, abandoned the Eitz HaChaim, which is beside the Torah, emes, and went with the Eitz Hadas Tovara, which brought death to the world. And Yaakov Avinu is the opposite. His midah of Tiferes is besod Titain emes Yaakov, and that he's also, his midah is called Chaim. His midah is called Chaim. And that's Yaakov Avinu Lomei, says he's about to say, and it's because he's dobek in the Eitz HaChaim, which is the Torah, which is emes Titain emes Yaakov. So Yaakov Avinu, in general, aside from finalizing, and adding the missing step of what Avram Yitzchak had not yet fixed from Chet Adam Rishon, but he himself like is the spitz of the Avos. Bechir should be Avos, and not just, and it's beside like Achron Chaviv. He didn't just add one more piece. His finishing the tikkun puts him as closest to what Adam Rishon was before the sin. And it comes out that his midah is Torah, Eitz HaChaim, which is the opposite of where Adam went when he went to Eitz HaDas and brought death to the world. Okay, and he brings a Zor that therefore, because Yaakov clings to the Eitz HaChaim, which is beside Torah, which is Titain Emes Yaakov, like we said, right? So and that's Chaim, and therefore, if you see Yaakov in a dream, you could expect that they're going to add life to you. It's Chaim, the opposite of Misa, which came from the Chet Eitz HaDas. So Yaakov Avinu also, aside from being metakin for Gilei Arayis, generally speaking, is the biggest tikkun for Adam Rishon, also generally speaking, aside from his particular, piece of the puzzle that he adds of being metakin for Gilei Arayis. Okay. So says the Zera Shimshon, Umeatov Shavas Tiknu Pagam Shalom Rishon Min Arayishu Nikvarim Etzel B'Ma'ora Lochein Esav Shakul Lo Tikein Klum. Right. So now, since the Avos were metakin for Adam Rishon, that's why they should be buried next to Adam Rishon. Yaakov, now it just also participated in the tikkun, but like he is the spitz of tikkun, and he is the opposite of Esav. Esav was the guy that they were all propping up at the time. Like we said, can't help but draw the parallels to today. Bnei Keturah, Yishmael, they all intermarried. It's all the different types of Arabs. Them and Esav, the atheistic left, of the Western world. Sometimes they prop up those guys in their proxy wars. Sometimes they always support each other. One is the active combatant, and the other two are propping him up. So there, Bnei Yishmael, Bnei Keturah all came to prop up Esav because he's the competitor for that space in Ras Machpelah. Right? And Esav would represent them in blocking Am Yisrael from being the true chosen people, the true Bnei Avram, the true owners of Eretz Yisrael, the true owners of Hebron. Right? Esav can't compete. Esav he's not making no tikkun for Adam Rishon. He's making things even worse. Besides the fact that he was a professional murderer. That was his, biggest. But he also was quite an adulterer, also, as we know. Quite a womanizer, as we know, also. So even though womanizing and theft particularly belonged to Yishmael, Esav was very good at it, and that's why they could get along, and they were father-in-law, son-in-law. Okay, so Esav, he made no tikkun for Adam Rishon. So you say, this guy buried there next to the Avos who metakin for Adam Rishon, or Esav. It was just so ridiculous. They just had to fold and just put their crowns on alongside Yosef's crown on Yaakov's own. לפי שהוא גמר עתיקה, מה שקרא אברהם ויצחק, שלא תקנו אלא עבוד זו שפיכות דם, רק גילוי ערayis. Right? So now it goes a little bit deeper. He says the points in reverse what we said. We already said that Yaakov is the spitz, that he finalizes the tikkun, right? Which makes him even greater than Avram and Yitzchak, because Avram left what to fix. Yitzchak left what to fix. Yaakov, after Yaakov's nothing more to fix. But to show that Yaakov is not just one more piece of the puzzle, he's finalizes and locks in the tikkun. What's the sign of that? All his kids are kosher. Yaakov mitaso shleima. Something which Avraham Avinu wasn't zocha to because he had Yishmael. Yitzchak wasn't zocha to because he had Esav. All right, so Yaakov mitaso shleima. Imamish closed this. He finalized the tikkun because from his point onwards, which no more of us now Shvatim, and they're all being born kosher Jews. Right? He closed the circuit. That's his greatness. And that's why he has this madrega in particular. All tzaddikim we say, tzaddikim mitzasam kurim chayim, and all those who are buried with Adam Rishon, they're all struggling against the death that Adam Rishon brought into the world, right? So they're not fully dead because they're struggling against death, right? But Yaakov Avinu Mamish attains that, right? And he's above death. And what's the limud? What's the limud? So he invokes the Gemara that we mentioned before, from Tanis. Makishul Zaro, Mazor B'chaim, Mafu B'chaim, right? We compare Yaakov to his kids. Just like his kids are still alive, he's still alive. Yaakov Avinu's life is our life is his life. The Jewish people are still alive. That's Yaakov is still being alive, right? That's we are the eternal, unkillable people, right? The Jew doesn't disappear. You exile us from our land, we don't assimilate, and we don't, lose our cultural independence and our spiritual independence, right? The Jews don't die because we explained in another form, we're connected to the Torah that's eternal and doesn't die. But it's all Yaakov Avinu made us this Am that could absorb the Torah. That's Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu is, that we have a Torah's Chaim, that what makes us Am Yisrael Chai, that we don't die. And Yaakov Avinu reached that, gave us that Madrega. And that's why Yaakov Avinu lo meis, because our being the eternal nation comes from him. And that's why we're all called either Bnei Yisrael, which was his name, or Bnei Yaakov. Beis Yaakov, Bnei Yisrael. And so Yaakov Avinu Mamish hit the jackpot. Avram and Yitzchak got closer and closer. And Yaakov Avinu got over the top. He got over the pole, over the bar that was set by Chet Adam Rishon, the ceiling. He got over that ceiling. He got over, so he broke through, and that makes it even bigger than Avram Yitzchak. So if Avram Yitzchak already buried next to Adam Rishon, Kal v'chomer Yaakov, right, who was mamish metaken Chet Adam Rishon, even more than Avram Yitzchak, and he was zochet to Chaim, and he begets an Am Yisrael Chai, and that's why Yaakov Avinu lo meis, because he created the eternal nation. So our eternal life comes from him. And so in that way, it's called that he's still alive because we're still alive, right? He mamish overcame the Misa that, Adam Rishon brought into the world. Right? So he certainly is Ra'ui to be buried in Marasa Machpelah, with the others who were metakin for Adam Rishon, because he even did more tikkun than they did, not just, didn't just add to where they left off, but he just all the way got over the ceiling, right? So he didn't just finish Gilead rice that was needed still to be finished, but with that he also got over the ceiling. So he for sure deserves to be buried there. And Esav, it was just so self-evident. This guy doesn't belong, and everyone just saw it and just like forget it. Just put their crowns on Yaakov Avinu's coffin. So now he brings from the Iyun Yaakov, which is a Pirush on Agadita, that what the Gemara goes on to say. There were 36 Ksarim. 36 Ksarim is 2 times Chai. Yaakov Avinu's Chai B'olam Hazeh, let alone that he's Chai, eternal life, but he's even alive in this world. He's alive in this world in the sense that he finally begets a nation. All his children are from Am Yisrael Chai, right? The eternal nation that can't be killed. So Yaakov is alive in this world and in the next world. So Chai, right? That's 36, right? And Baruch Hashem, right? We end off Sefer Bereshis with going into Golus, but the Koch of Yaakov, of Vayechi Yaakov, Shvas Rishona, right? In the course of his 17 years there, he infused us with life. He infused us with life. 17 is Gematria Tov, Besod V'Aro Himis Orki Tov, and it's also one less than the Gematria of Chai, life. And so Yaakov plus his 17 years gave Chai to Am Yisrael and made us the eternal nation that we will survive. We should survive and just finally get out of this growth. So we're currently in B'mehera B'yameinu. Good Shabbos. Chazak v'nit chazek.